chapter 32 of Exodus. It's the account of the building of a golden calf. So we're going to consider that. We read it little by little, a section at a time, and think about what was going on and how did Moses respond? How did he react to it? And how was God reacting to it? So we're going to read that account this evening. Everybody ready? And if we are, perhaps somebody would be kind enough to read. No, it's just verse 1.
When the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered themselves together to Aaron and said to him, "Up, make us gods who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him."
Okay, so this is just introducing the situation to us. Now, one of the things that's difficult about this is trying to see exactly where do these pieces fit together, because we've got to chapter 20 and we received the 10 commandments, then 21 to 23 we had all the other rules and regulations, and then straight away we were then into the building of the tabernacle. So all of this is being coming out of a conversation between God and Moses up the mountain, and Moses has been up there for 40 days and 40 nights. So I expect it's a familiar story to most of us, if not all of us. But what jumped out just from that first verse, when the people saw Moses was so long coming down the mountain, they come around to Aaron and they say to Aaron, "Come, make us gods who will go before us." And then they say, "As for this fellow Moses," it says really not very good. "We who brought us out of Egypt, we don't know what's happened." Comments or questions?
How long was he up the mountain? Oh, sorry. How long was he up the mountain?
Say that again.
How long was he up the mountain?
40 days and 40 nights.
Yeah.
So that's quite a long time. That's a month and a half, 6 weeks.
I was thinking that given all that Moses had done for them and how he'd led them and trusted in God and done his best to hold everything together, they seemed very ungrateful and impatient. And also God, God's love and bounty, they seem to have forgotten him.
Yeah. Or misunderstood everything. And what I was trying to say just now was that I think we need to sort of be aware that at this time they might have heard the 10 commandments. They may well have done, but all the details of the law, they might not have had that. And they certainly haven't had the instructions for building the tabernacle. Although it's in the story in Exodus and flows through, we know that came with Moses, and he came down from the mountain bringing the law, and he came down from the mountain with the instructions for the tabernacle. So what we're reading here followed on from what Moses has recorded before. In actual fact, where it fits in with the giving of the law and the giving of the instructions for the tabernacle, there's a big question mark as to exactly whether they've had anything at that stage. So they may not, and I think it might be useful to imagine that they have not yet received all the commandments. Or
when did they get broken? When did they get broken? He had to go up again, didn't he? And then he had to go up again and come down again, didn't he?
Well, as we read through chapter 32, we get to the bit where Moses comes down with the tablets of stone and then throws them on the ground and they break. So that's at the end of this chapter. So it sort of flows on from there. That's why I'm saying that to understand the sequence of events is a little bit difficult. Any other comments?
I mean, to me, when you first read it, you think these people are incredibly stupid. I mean, they're like toddlers, got no patience at all. And yet, when I think of myself, I mean, not that long ago, I was saying to people last autumn, we really need to start praying for rain, because the drought had carried on from about March right through the spring and the summer, and it was beginning to be a real concern in the country. And then it began to rain. And after about a fortnight, I found myself saying to John, oh, it's raining again. I'm tired of this rain. And I thought, I mean, it's just human nature, isn't it? Just to be so impatient and to forget things so quickly. And God reminded me of this, just as I was thinking of these stupid Israelites and thinking, how could they possibly have forgotten so quickly? And God reminded me of this and thought,
Okay. So when we think back then, it's only a matter of weeks since they left Egypt. It's not that long ago, right? So a few weeks ago, they were in slavery and living in Egypt, and God has brought them out. So he's been God who has delivered them. He's brought them out of Egypt, and he's guided and provided. They've had the miracle of the provision of food. They've had the miracle of the provision of water. All of those things have been going on. They've had God's help in the battle against the Amalekites. They've experienced all of these things and seem to have forgotten. Then against that, there's what is about to happen.
Can you hear me?
So they are about this wonderful 150-foot long tabernacle going to be built with all the gold and silver and everything in it we've looked at for the last 2 weeks. So all of that is about to come. They have this amazing experience. So they're right on the edge of that. So God has got plans for them. And I think that the issue really that stands out is they're not concerned about what God's plan is. They seem to have forgotten that God has got a plan and a purpose. And I think that's where lots of churches are at, and perhaps Christians are at as well. That we forget that God has got a plan and a purpose. And we sort of struggle on them. We make things up, have our own ideas of how things should go, and we can get it wrong, get it seriously wrong sometimes. Whereas really what we could do is stopping and saying, okay, Lord, what's your plan and purpose? What are we supposed to be doing? Where are we supposed to be going with you?
Because I realised the people were used to being told what to do, weren't they? I mean, when they were slaves, they would be told what to do. Moses had been telling them everything what to do, and suddenly they hadn't got anyone to tell them what to do. They'd lost their leader. So, and the fact that he was away for so long, which is quite a long while, without, not having any instructions about what to do next.
Well, they'd watched Moses walk into this fire. To go back to chapter 19. So they probably thought, oh, it's been burnt up. And so I think there was probably that fear that Moses is never coming back. They're stuck in this desert, leading us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't look at God, do you? If else, that sounds as though it's the ending if you looked at God. So they probably thought that he looked and that was the end of him.
So that could well be a factor, isn't it? That they thought that he maybe have died, and they were
True.
in a situation. Okay, so all of that is quite helpful. Anybody else got any further comment or questions? Just a final comment on verse 1. To me, it seems, and certainly in some of the commentaries, that their attitude was quite derogatory about Moses when they say, as for this fellow Moses. So, it's a little bit like people saying, as for this chap, Keir Starmer, I don't know what he's up to, and so on. So, some parallels with regards to leadership issues. And Moses has this enormous challenge of leading all these people. And he knows, you can't please all people all the time. So, okay, let's read verse 3 and 4. Somebody like to read verse 3 and 4. We find out what is Aaron going to say. They've come all around Aaron. So Moses isn't there, so they picked on Aaron, and he's having to take the brunt of their complaint.
Aaron answered them, take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons and your daughters are wearing and bring them to me. So all the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron. He took what they handed him and made it into an idol cast in the shape of a calf, fashioning it with a tool. Then they said, these are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt.
Okay. To some extent, we've said when we were talking about verse 1 that there's something somewhat ridiculous about the whole thing that they're saying, that they're wanting to have something that they can actually see, and having got that far, they then declare that this is their God who has brought them out of Egypt. Now, a day before, or a couple of days before, it was earrings and rings, you know, it was just jewelry. And then they're saying, this that's been made out of our jewelry is the God who's brought us out of Egypt, which is utterly ridiculous. It isn't alive, it has no life, and yet only do they think it can lead them into the promised land, but they also think it's brought them out of Egypt. Okay, we've reached verses 2 to 4 of chapter 32, and it's Aaron's response to what the people have saying. One of the commentaries suggested it might have been all the leaders of the various tribes that had come.
Yeah.
Not all 5 million of them. But he's being pressured into doing something, and this is how he responds. He says that he wants them to take off their gold earrings and bring all their gold and jewelry, golden jewelry, and then he later tells Moses that he threw it into a fire and it came out looking like a calf. But here it also says that it was fashioned with a tool. So Aaron actually did do something to shape it into something recognizable. The fact that it's a calf is interesting because there was a god, an Egyptian god that was in the shape of a bull. So it might have been that, and it's suggested that the word that's translated calf just means a young male cow. So it was it could have been in the peak of its vitality, and so it wasn't just like a baby. Their attitude is ridiculous, isn't it?
I've heard the suggestion in the past that because here it talks about instead of gods, it says your God, a God, and that actually they were trying to make an image of Yahweh, their God.
Could well have
something that they can focus on and put their hope and faith in.
Could well have been. We know that making a graven image was wrong anyway, but we don't know whether or not they've.
But they hadn't had the 10 Commandments then.
Say again, David.
They hadn't received the 10 Commandments.
So they didn't know.
Well, that's the bit that we can't be 100% sure.
Yeah, but I think you have to base it on their experience of seeing the gods of Egypt around, which are all dignified, and I think perhaps the bull god, whatever it is, I suppose we can look it up, was probably the most powerful. They thought of their god as being powerful.
Yes.
To me, it's how modern culture gets into Christianity and gives us images that really aren't biblical at times.
Yeah. I mean, at the very least, it's a kind of compromise, isn't it, with truth?
Yeah.
I mean, they've had a God who talked to them, and they heard his voice, and so on. You know, they are aware that God has been communicating with them and doing things. They've got a living God who's doing things. But now they need something that they can have that's physical, that they could actually touch.
Oh, what's an interesting little bit in my Bible. It says, not until 1990 did archaeologists unearth the first golden calf in Palestine, and to their surprise, it stood only a few inches tall. Contrary to popular depictions in films and historical books, Aaron's solid gold calf too may have been very small, but elevated on a pedestal for visual emphasis. Undoubtedly, the Israelites knew of the bull god Apis, one of Egypt's important gods.
Yes. It's borrowing something from another religion, another culture, and mixing it up with theirs. In verse 4, it says, "They then said, 'These are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt.'" But it's not what Aaron's saying. It's what the people who have been coming and pressing Aaron to do something about it. Now he's done something about it, and they are saying, "These are your gods." So they're presenting them to the rest of Israel and declaring that these are the gods who brought you out of Egypt. Just the thought is that whether it was thinking that they had some power in themselves, or whether they were merely symbolic of the power of God, we can't be sure.
So
what they're doing is they're trying to design a God according to what they want. It's doing it the way they want, not necessarily what God wants. We sometimes sing a hymn with the words "immortal, invisible, God only wise," and you and I have a relationship with a living God that we can't see, and we experience Him in our lives, answering prayer and leading and guiding and providing for us. We have all of that, and if He chooses to be invisible, then it's wrong to redesign and say, well, wait a minute, I can do it better. I can make a better job, God, than what you're doing just now. I can give you some sort of physical presence. So designing faith, it's their idea of what God should be like. Sorry, somebody.
Me. So my burning question here is, why hasn't Aaron stood up? And I mean, he's a confidant of Moses. He's closer to what's going on and what has gone on, but he just said, "Oh, bring me your gold." Why hasn't he been? Why hasn't he spoken up for Moses and said, "Look, and God, you've seen what he's done for us, so far. Why do you need this effigy?"
Yeah.
I just don't get Aaron.
No, he could have done, couldn't he? He could have.
Yeah.
He could have spoken out, but obviously did not have confidence. Didn't have the confidence that Moses had to speak and instruct the people appropriately. He could have said very easily, "Well, let's give it another week. Let's give it another fortnight or whatever." But doesn't do any of that. He caves in under pressure.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the worst kind of Christian leadership that we come across, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Where instead of having confidence, the great thing that we long for in terms of Christian leadership is that leaders have confidence in their relationship with God and their understanding of God, so that they can act wisely. And here he's just illustrating weakness in the situation.
We've seen that in modern times too, so nothing's changed in some ways.
It's
I think that's perfectly valid comment. Shall we read on?
no, hang on a minute. I want to ask a question.
Go on.
Why do you think it's just earrings? Because even if they had a biggish gold earring, it's not much gold. When they bought quite a bit of jewelry and gold out of Egypt, didn't they? Why is it
They
just
did.
Yeah.
They did.
You don't
And-
have enough to make a small calf, wouldn't you, if it's just earrings?
Yeah.
We don't know whether it's a small calf. One of the suggestions was from the archaeologists, it might have been a small calf on a pedestal. What we don't know is how many earrings they had between them, because there's an awful lot of people.
Yes.
There's millions of people, so even though the earrings might be small, they're going to add up to quite something. But they're going to end up drinking it, so it is an interesting issue as to what they're bringing. Because if you remember the video we watched last week, that was amazing how much gold and silver they brought. The foundations for those pillars was 75 pounds weight of gold in the tent. And in silver elsewhere in the tabernacle. Obviously, they were willing to give sacrificially in order to do what they wanted, to create this form of God. So we've reached verse 5. So let's just read 5 and 6, and then we'll read what God has to say about it. So 5 and 6. Who hasn't read yet?
When Aaron saw this, he built an altar in front of the calf and announced, "Tomorrow there will be a festival to the Lord." So the next day, the people rose early and sacrificed burnt offerings and presented fellowship offerings. Afterwards, they sat down to eat and drink and got up to indulge in revelry.
Right, okay. So we've got the mention of Yahweh at last. Okay, so Aaron declares that they're going to have a festival day that's following. No word here about sanctifying themselves, as has been mentioned elsewhere. But they're just going to have a party time. But the altar that is going to be built is, and the festival that's going to be enjoyed is for Yahweh. So somewhere along the line, the real God has got a presence, is still in their mindset, but it's got mixed up with this idolatry that's going on. And the phrase about indulging in revelry, the various commentaries suggest that this might have been some kind of an orgy.
The Message calls it a wild party.
Yes. You could read what you want into it, couldn't you? But the phrase that's used often indicates that there was a sexual dimension to it.
Sad.
But they're just eating and drinking and indulging themselves, aren't they? Physically in the situation. They're having a party time. It's all me-centered. The whole thing is me-centered. I want to make a God that I can worship and I can see and handle and say, this is God. So having this representation of God is important, and then I'm going to celebrate it and worship. I'm going to bring offerings. It's also, it seems to me, a little bit like they rise up early the next day and they bring their offerings, their sacrifices, burnt offerings, and offer all of these things to God. So they do the religious bit, and then okay, we've done that. Okay, now we're going to have a party time and really indulge ourselves and do what we really like to do. I sometimes wonder on Sundays whether that's something I might find myself guilty of. You know, go to church and worship God and sing his praises, listen to his word, and then after that sat down and had a nice Sunday lunch and either a snooze or possibly watching a good film on the television, you know. So we've done the religious bit. Now we can get on with life. That sort of thing, it seems to me.
Well, I saw something online because I start the day with these little Moravian Bible verses for the day. YouTube have decided to offer me lots of other little YouTube videos for the day, and they're a very eclectic mix. And this morning there was a Catholic video, a priest telling a follower of his all about the different sins that would attract demons. And so I had a quick look, and he was saying about all the different sins and the strength of them, which would ensure that the demons would cling tightly to you, and how you could loosen their grip. And while he was talking about this, he had this immense bar next to him full of all this exotic alcohol. And I thought, well, I wonder what demon is sticking closely to him. I mean, there were all these different coloured bottles, you know, all these exotic labels and so on. And I thought, is it real or is it a poster? But I think it was genuine. I thought, well, we did know quite a few Catholics in town. And the cottage where John and I actually briefly lived in Stamford, John lodged with a lady there for a number of years, and it was next door to a pub called the Reindeer. And quite a few Catholics would appear sitting on the steps having a drink after Mass at the Reindeer. And I was thinking about this. I mean, they didn't, I don't think they went there to particularly get drunk, but they certainly were relaxing after Mass. And I was thinking about it. But this priest that seemed to pontificate, appropriate word, I suppose, about all these sins and so on, I thought, well, it obviously doesn't include imbibing alcohol, because he must have had enough there to supply the entire parish.
Well, there's nothing wrong with drinking alcohol, is there?
No.
And that's not the issue. In Market Harborough, the Catholic Church is conveniently located opposite the Conservative Club, and so they could just step over the road. But I remember going to Milan Cathedral, and this amazing building that had been built with the intention of it being for the glory of God, and all this elaborate architecture and decoration, so on. And when I got up onto the roof, went up the steps and went onto the roof, there was a bar on the roof, and a number of people were there, for drink, and were sitting around and just about to have another one. So it does seem strange and anachronistic. I grew up at a time when you came home from church on a Sunday morning, and then you might change your clothes, but you didn't go out to play. You could play at home, but you didn't go out to play. I don't know whether those were better. You know, was that a better system, or was it legalistic and wrong in what it was doing?
And I mean, in Wales, and in Scotland, I think, from what I've heard, is the same. You'd never hang your washing out.
Oh no, never.
No, I mean,
you wouldn't sew, you wouldn't repair anything, you wouldn't sew on a Sunday.
Right. No, I mean, it was a day of rest.
Yeah.
So, yeah, except for the woman who was cooking Sunday dinner. I mean, it's or the people who were preparing Monday's newspaper. I mean, there were those people who were, I mean, they were preparing Monday's work, weren't they? And I think that was often overlooked. But yes, it was, you know, and I think on the continent, I mean, there was a man, Justin Rowlatt. He often reports on the environmental issues on the TV from BBC, and he spent a time in Germany, and he and his wife, and they were hoovering on a Sunday, and their neighbours knocked at the door and said, "Would you not do that, please? Because Sunday is a day of rest, and the sound of it disturbs your neighbours." And so we're very conscious of that in Germany. And he was quite taken aback. And I thought, that's admirable, really, that they want to respect that and they're not afraid to tell people so. And I thought, good for them.
Okay. Well, we might have various mixed opinions as to what we can do and what we shouldn't do on the Lord's Day. It's important perhaps to ponder it and think about it and think about whether or not we are guilty of compartmentalizing things. So, we have our religious bit, but the rest of the time is me bit. This is when I have some fun. This is when I have some pleasure and enjoyment and so on. But that's obviously what they were doing. And we need to reflect on it and to listen to what God might be saying to each of us. We need to read from verse 7 through to verse 10. So this is where God says what he's feeling about it.
Well, the message is typically quite lively. So
good.
God spoke to Moses, "Go, get down there. Your people whom you brought up from the land of Egypt have fallen to pieces. In no time at all, they've turned away from the way I commanded them. They made a molten calf and worshipped it. They've sacrificed to it and said, 'These are the gods of, O Israel, that brought you up from the land of Egypt.'" So, sorry, to 10,
Sure,
are we
yeah.
going to 10?
Yeah, keep going.
God said to Moses, "I look at these people. Oh, what a stubborn, hard-headed people. Let me alone now. Give my anger free rein to burst into flames and incinerate them. But I will make a great nation out of you."
He was cross with your version.
Yes.
You did say it was lively. Right. So comments and questions, verses 7 through to verse 10.
I mean, it makes it sound as if God wasn't keeping Moses there, doesn't it? I mean, I don't know how accurate it is. Go, get down there, as if to say, you better hurry, don't hang about.
Yeah.
So whether that's actually the meaning, I don't know.
Well, I think it's worth just pondering on the fact that we don't know whether God was enjoying Moses' company, but we can imagine that Moses is having a whale of a time up on the mountain, talking with God and getting all the instructions about the tabernacle and the rules and regulations by which the people are to live. So he's having all of this time with God. I can remember many, many years ago living in a community, and there was a crisis, and the housekeeper was needed to attend to the crisis. And I knocked on her door, and she was very, very angry and very cross with me, and said, "Didn't I realize I was disturbing her quiet time? You're not supposed to have a crisis when I'm having my quiet time." So in a sense, it is like this, where God says to Moses, go down, or go get thee down, go. He's pushing him out. But there is a time when we need to hear what God is saying to us in terms of what he wants to do, what he's concerned about. I just think about Sunday mornings and all the nice people at church and singing hymns and saying prayers and so on. And there's a world going to a Christless eternity all around. And you just wonder, you want God really to thrust people out. It's nice to have your company, but, there are people out there that I want to save. There are people out there I want to hear my word. Go and talk to the people. Get out of it. Go.
It strikes me that before I understood more about the Old Testament, I always used to think of the God of the Old Testament as very fiery, angry, and vengeful. But when you read this, and the people have turned against him after all he's given them and guided them, you can understand why he gets so angry. Because in the NIV it says, "Now leave me alone so that my anger may burn against them and that I may destroy them." So you get this impression of bubbling up inside him, and his anger against them turning away after all he's done. And it reminds me that it's very the preaching style of the Reverend Ian Paisley, all fire and hell damnation, you know, hellfire and damnation. And it gives a completely wrong impression of why God might be angry. I understand that a bit more now.
Well, is it a good thing that we've got here? We've got an angry God here. We've got a God who's been offended by what the people are doing. His people, he's been leading and guiding them. He brought them out of Egypt. He's delivered them. He's given them fresh water to drink and food to eat. And he's doing all of this, and he's going with them. He's got a plan to have a home in their midst, you know, the tabernacle being his home, his dwelling place. So all of that. And then he looks down and sees them worshipping a calf. They're worshipping this golden calf. They're praying to it. They're offering sacrifices to it. And they're saying, these are your gods, Israel, who brought you up. He says, this is terrible. So is it not a good thing that Moses has recorded God's anger in this situation? I think it is.
It is, yes.
God doesn't seem to have taken ownership of them, though, does he? He says they're your people.
Yeah.
And he said to Moses, I will make a great nation of you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then you. He sort of is looking to a future when he can take them under his wing and he can be their God. But at that moment, he's just leading them and see what they'll do. And they don't seem to be acting as he wants them to, does it?
Disappointing him.
Okay, so he hasn't sort of locked them into a framework and so on. I don't think he's abandoned them, but I do think that the words in verse 7 are significant when he says to Moses, your people who you brought out of Egypt have become corrupt. And it makes me think about, you know, the parable of the young man who wants to have all the riches now, and he goes off and spends all the money on parties and prostitutes, and the older brother can't refer to his brother as his brother. He's your son, you know, your son. And I wonder whether any of us who have been parents have had an experience where we've said to our other half, have you seen what your daughter's done or your son has done? You know, suddenly it's not my daughter, it's not my son, it's yours. It does sound like that. That's what God is saying to Moses. Oh, you go and have a look at what your people are doing, you know.
And actually it says, you know, he says, whom you brought up from the land of Egypt.
Yeah.
I always thought that was God's doing through Moses.
Yes.
Yeah, well, they kind of worked on it together, I think. He couldn't have done it without God, but God chose to use him.
Yeah.
And he says to Moses, I will make a great nation of you. He doesn't say them.
Yeah, it's like, I'm going to forget what I've promised to Abraham and we'll start again.
I mean, I've always wondered if you really knew whether God knew what was going to happen, and that he wouldn't have to destroy them, and that Moses would say what he did.
Yes.
You know, but with God's foreknowledge, you wonder how it works out.
Yeah.
It's a theological problem.
Exactly. And I'm amazed, John, that God saved me. Jesus died on the cross for me when he knew that from time to time I would act inappropriately. You know, you know. So yet he loved me, and he did that for me. You know, it's wonderful. We have a phrase that's occurs here in verse 9: stiff-necked. Okay, stiff-necked. And there's a warning in scripture about those who stiffen their neck or become hard-hearted, that suddenly they'll be cut off and without remedy. So be careful that you don't become a stiff-necked person. What does it mean to be stiff-necked? It was a farming term. So if you can imagine a horse or an ox that you're trying to plow with or get them to pull a cart, and you're wanting to get them to turn to the left. Will you turn to the left? Come on, turn to the left. And they don't want to. And I'm not going to yield. I'm not going to bend your way. I'm going to go this way. So that's the picture of an animal that's determined to carry on its way and isn't responding to the reins or to the
leading. Yeah.
It says here under 32 in my Bible, it said, God responds in great anger when his mercy is trampled on.
Interesting.
Yes.
No, it says, idols again, even though Israel had seen the invisible God in action, they still wanted the familiar gods they could see and shape into whatever image they desired. How much like them we are. Our great temptation is still to shape God to our liking, to make him convenient to obey or ignore. God responds in great anger when his mercy is trampled on. The gods we create blind us to the love that our loving God wants to shower on us. God cannot work in us when we elevate anyone or anything above him. What false gods in your life are preventing the true God from living in you?
Thank you, Chrissy. That's really helpful.
Very interesting, Chrissy.
Right. Okay. Well, we've just got time to read from 11 through to 14, where Moses now responds to God's anger. Perhaps somebody who hasn't read would like to read 11 to 14. Doesn't matter if it is somebody who's read before, but
Moses sought the favor of the Lord his God. O Lord, he said, why should your anger burn against your people, whom you brought out of Egypt with great power and a mighty hand? Why should the Egyptians say it was with evil intent that he brought them out, to kill them in the mountains and to wipe them off the face of the earth? Turn from your fierce anger, relent, and do not bring disaster on your people. Remember your servants Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, to whom you swore by your own self, I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and I will give your descendants all this land I promised them, and it will be their inheritance forever. Then the Lord relented and did not bring on his people the disaster he had threatened.
Thank you. So, just thinking about that, what about in verse 11? Is there something significant about what Moses does? Moses sought the favor of the Lord.
And he starts talking about your people as well to God. He changes it round from what God said.
That's true.
So is this saying that Moses' intercession really is that he's appealing to the fact that God is a God of love and compassion? We might say a God of grace.
And God faithful to his promises as well.
Right? Absolutely.
I find it quite reading it from the Message, I'm always not quite sure whether they've got it right, but when it says, you don't want the Egyptians saying, well, there you are, he had it in for them all the time. He brought them out so he could kill them in the mountains, wipe them right off the face of the earth. I mean, it's an interesting ploy, isn't it? In a way.
I think that Mr. Taylor's got it perfectly right.
Right.
In what he's saying, yeah.
I mean, it doesn't seem a possible. It doesn't seem as if it would work with God saying that to him. Does it? You could say it to, your mother or your friend down the road, but saying it to Almighty God, everything.
It's a bold move.
Oh, well, that's a good point. you can't imagine him rethinking it because you'd said that to him. You can imagine, Kemi Badenoch saying that, or someone, but it seems a strange argument to put to Almighty God.
Yes.
But it worked.
In a sense,
he's been the mediator.
yeah, and in a sense, we're seeing this acted out in politics today, because the issue is we've got a prime minister who many people think ought to wash his hands, quit the job, and walk away from it. And that's what they see as the sensible thing to do. But there are others who are saying, but we set out 2 years ago on a task. Let's not forget why we were elected. Let's not forget our responsibility. So there's a balanced sort of argument that's going on. And in a sense, because this is Moses who's standing in the gap. I can remember that my dad once was extremely angry with my brother and myself, and it took my mum to stand between my angry dad and us, and protect us in the situation, because my dad was very angry, and he suffered with his nerves very, very badly after the war. And it took my mum occasions to sort of put her life at risk, stand and take his anger rather than it coming out on my brother and myself. So that's what is happening here. And of course, Moses is a type of Jesus. Fiona.
It also reminds me a bit of when Abraham was arguing with God about saving the Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yes.
Your mother, Barry, says that your mother had a good relationship with your father to be able to stand in the way, and that says Moses' relationship with God must have superb.
And in turn, Clive, it speaks about our relationship with God and our interceding on behalf of others, what we're longing God to do. We want God to have mercy and forgiveness on our churches that so often meet Sunday after Sunday, but don't leave any real space for God to come. And need to be, just conscious of all that's wrong in the world today, and long for God to step in and do something about it. And we should be using our relationship with God to be faithful in our intercession and our prayers. I did say just before handing over to Fiona just now, of course, remember that Moses is a type of Christ. He's there foreshadowing the coming of Jesus and who Jesus is. We think about Jesus' faithful intercession, his intercession for us. And he's there in the presence of his Father with wounds in his hands and feet and side. He's got the wounds of what we've done to him. And they're pleading on our behalf. That's the amazing grace of God. Okay, well, we'll draw a line under it, but the bit that goes on from that, right, is that the Lord does relent. Okay, the Lord relented and did not bring on his people the disaster that he'd threatened. So he's relented, and we need to be careful not to think of that God's soft. God's soft. That doesn't matter. He won't do what he said. We should take him seriously. And Moses then goes down the mountain and confronts the people. There's something to say to his brother Aaron.